Olivia found the letter while sorting through her late mother's closet. It was tucked inside an old shoebox, surrounded by faded photographs, a dried sprig of lavender, and a pair of reading glasses. The paper was soft at the edges, yellowed from time, and folded so many times it felt almost weightless in her hand. There was no envelope, no address, no name written at the top. But in the center, in her mother's familiar, slightly trembling handwriting, were 5 quiet words that stopped Olivia cold. "I thought I had more time." That was it. No story, no explanation, just those 5 words, as if they had been whispered in the dark and sealed away in that box, waiting to be found. Her mother had always been the strong one, the reliable one, the woman who stayed late at the library to help students study, the woman who wrote birthday cards by hand, baked pies from scratch, and still managed to show up to every school concert and Sunday dinner. She had plans for retirement. She talked about learning to play the piano, visiting the coast, starting a family recipe book. But those dreams had been placed on the back burner for years, for later, for when life settled down, for when there was finally time. But time had other plans. Her mother passed away just weeks after she stepped away from work, and that letter, Olivia realized, was not just a regret. It was a warning. A gentle, powerful message passed down from one woman to another. A message Olivia could not ignore, because lately, she had been feeling it too. That quiet wondering that comes after the kids are grown. The job title is gone, and the schedule that once held everything together suddenly disappears. She had been asking herself questions she never used to ask. What now? Who am I if no one needs me the way they used to? Is it too late to start something new? And in the silence of her kitchen, holding that letter in her hands, she realized something. Maybe this was not just the end of one chapter. Maybe it was the beginning of a brand new one. When the purpose suddenly disappears. For nearly 4 decades, Olivia poured herself into the lives of others. She taught history at the local high school, the kind of teacher students remembered long after graduation. Her classroom was filled with stories, posters of Eleanor Roosevelt, a hand-drawn map of the Oregon Trail, shelves of worn books with underlined passages from former students. She coached the debate team, led the yearbook club, stayed after hours to help students who were falling behind, and she knew their birthdays, their dreams, their struggles. And in between all that, she raised 2 children of her own, cared for her aging parents, and made a home that felt like a safe haven. Her days were full, not just with tasks, but with meaning. She woke up with purpose. She went to sleep with the good kind of tired, the kind that says, "You mattered today." And then it ended. There was no ceremony, no big send-off, just a quiet June afternoon, a few goodbye hugs, and a final glance at the room she had called hers for 37 years. She left with a box of keepsakes and a thank you card, signed in rushed handwriting by the graduating class. The first few weeks of retirement felt like vacation. She slept in a little, cleaned out drawers, started a puzzle she had been meaning to open for years. But by the end of the first month, something else crept in. She no longer had to set an alarm, but she still woke up early, out of habit maybe, or something deeper. The coffee tasted the same, but it did not feel earned. Her home, once her sanctuary, suddenly felt too quiet, too still. She missed the noise, the motion, the subtle chaos of bell schedules and teenagers and planning periods. Without that rhythm, the days stretched long and undefined, like a hallway with no doors. She told herself she should be enjoying it. She had earned this time. She reminded herself of that constantly. But deep down, something was unsettled. Not unhappy. Just unanchored. It was the little things that got to her. Not being asked for advice, not needing to pack lunch, not hearing her name called from down the hall. the simple realization that no one was counting on her to show up today or tomorrow. The loneliness was not loud. It was subtle. It sat in the chair across from her at breakfast. It followed her on walks. It lingered while she folded laundry. It was not that she had nothing to do. She had lists. But what she lacked was something harder to name. She missed being needed. Not out of ego, but out of identity. It was not just about her job. It was about the space she once occupied, the people she once served, the sense that she had a role in the world that only she could fill. Without that, she started to ask questions she had never had time to ask. Who am I without the classroom, without the structure, without the responsibilities that once gave shape to every hour of her day? She did not talk about it much, not even with her husband. He had his own routines, his own way of settling into retirement. They shared meals, watched their favorite shows, and talked about the grandkids. But deep down, she felt the drift. A part of her wanted more, not more money, not more recognition, just more of something she could not yet define. One afternoon, she caught herself scrolling through her phone for nearly an hour. When she looked up, the sun had shifted, and the room was filled with golden light. She had not done anything, had not spoken to anyone, and for the first time, she said it out loud, in a voice barely louder than a whisper. I feel invisible. And once she said it, the truth landed with weight and clarity. She was not looking for rest. She was looking for renewal. The 3 quiet fears she didn't mention. Olivia had always been the one who listened, who held space for others, who made sure everyone else was okay before checking in with herself. So when the silence crept in after retirement, she did what she had always done. She kept going. She baked bread. She organized the linen closet. She called her children, asked about their lives, their work, their kids. But when the calls ended, when the oven cooled and the rooms went quiet, she found herself facing something harder than she expected. Not just the absence of noise, but the presence of something else, something she could not quite name. It took her months to realize what it was. Fear. Not loud, frantic fear. A quieter kind. The kind that sits just beneath the surface. The kind you don't mention over coffee or during small talk. The kind that makes you pause in the hallway and wonder, am I still me? There were 3 fears in particular that Olivia carried but never voiced. The first fear was losing her role. For most of her life, Olivia's worth had been tied to what she gave. She was the teacher, the mom, the volunteer, the friend who remembered birthdays and showed up with soup when someone was sick. Her identity had been built through service, through showing up, through being counted on. And now, no one needed her lesson plans. No one stopped her in the hall to ask for help. The doorbell did not ring. The inbox stayed empty. Her role, once clear and constant, had vanished. And with it went a part of how she saw herself. The second fear was becoming invisible. At the grocery store, she was just another woman in the produce aisle. On the walking trail, no one looked twice. Even in her own family, she began to feel like a supporting character instead of the central one she had once been. She was proud of her children's independence, but there were moments when she missed being asked, "Mom, what do you think?" It wasn't about control. It was about presence. She wanted to feel seen again, not for what she used to do, but for who she still was. The third fear was the one that echoed the loudest at night. What if this is it? What if life had already given her its best? What if the classroom was the highlight? The birthday parties, the career, the busy schedule. What if all that was the peak? And what remained now was just waiting. Waiting for holidays, waiting for visits, waiting for the next doctor's appointment. She feared the slow fade, the quiet slipping into the background of her own story. But here's the thing Olivia did not yet realize. those fears, while real and powerful, were not the end. They were signals, not of failure, but of longing. Longing for meaning, longing for connection, longing for something more than survival. She was not broken. She was searching. And that search, as she was about to learn, could lead her somewhere beautiful. If only she gave herself permission to begin again. From loss to discovery. It started quietly, almost by accident. Olivia was not searching for a new purpose that day. She was simply looking for a piece of tape. The junk drawer in the kitchen, stuffed with dried-out pens, expired coupons, spare keys to unknown locks, offered no help. But as she sifted deeper, her hand brushed something familiar. It was a soft, leather-bound sketchbook, worn around the edges. Her name was written in the corner in faded black ink, the kind of thing you write when you still believe you'll return to it soon. Olivia froze for a moment, fingers tracing the cover. She hadn't drawn in years, decades really. Back in college, art had been her quiet joy. She was never the best in class, but she didn't need to be. She sketched to remember things: her dorm window view, her mother's hands, street lamps in early autumn. Then came jobs, marriage, children, lesson plans, grocery lists. Life filled up fast, and little by little, her sketchbooks were tucked away like keepsakes from a past life. She brought it to the kitchen table and opened it slowly. Most of the pages were blank. One had the beginning of a rose. Another showed a girl on a porch, the lines light and unfinished. Olivia stared at that page for a long time. Then, without really thinking, she picked up a pencil and started drawing again. Just a few lines. Her teacup, a houseplant, the shape of her hand holding the pencil. The drawings weren't good. Her lines were stiff, her shading rusty. But that wasn't what mattered. Something inside her had stirred. That evening, she didn't turn on the television like usual. She sat with her sketchbook and filled another page. It felt like waking up, not all at once, but gently, like sunlight warming the corner of a cold room. In the weeks that followed, Olivia let herself return to small things she had long ignored. She found a watercolor set in the basement, still wrapped in plastic. She signed up for a short community class, beginner's watercolor on Wednesday nights. She sat in a circle of other women, most older, all nervous, all unsure what they were doing there. She found comfort in their laughter, in their shared hesitation, in their quiet courage to begin again. From there, her curiosity spread. She started helping at the local community center one afternoon a week, reading stories to children whose parents were learning English in another room. She began spending mornings in her garden, not rushing through tasks, but noticing things. The smell of tomatoes ripening, the feel of warm dirt under her nails, the way bees landed without fear. She stopped trying to fill her calendar and started filling her soul. And in all of it, she discovered something deeper than a new hobby or a pleasant distraction. She discovered parts of herself that hadn't disappeared. They had only been waiting for her to have the time, the permission, the space to return. She began calling this her second spring. Not a retirement, not a retreat, but a reawakening. She realized that the question was never, "What am I supposed to do now?" It was, "What have I always loved but told myself I couldn't make time for?" The answers didn't come all at once, but slowly, steadily they appeared, in pencil marks, paint strokes, laughter shared in the back of a classroom, and long walks where she hummed to herself like she used to as a girl. It was not about becoming someone new. It was about reclaiming someone she had always been. Someone who still had so much life left in her, so much joy to create, so much wisdom to offer. And all she had to do was begin. 5 gentle ways back to herself. The transformation did not happen in a single moment. It unfolded in small, quiet ways, Subtle shifts in how Olivia moved through her day, how she listened to her thoughts, how she began to treat herself with the same care she had always given everyone else. Looking back, she could trace her journey through 5 gentle choices. Not resolutions, not rules. Just small invitations to reconnect with the life inside her. The first was something she called her energy check. Every evening after dinner, she would sit down with a notepad and jot down a list of what she had done that day. Nothing fancy, just a simple log. Took a walk, called her daughter, went to the grocery store, read a chapter from her novel. Then, beside each task, she would write one word: lift or drain. She began to notice patterns. Certain conversations gave her energy. Others left her heavy. Working in the garden made her smile. Scrolling through social media made her restless. Even things like cleaning the pantry felt oddly satisfying when done with music playing in the background. She realized she had spent so many years asking, "What do I need to get done?" that she had forgotten to ask, "How do I feel after doing it?" That small shift, tracking not just time but energy, helped her rebuild her days with intention, not obligation. The second was what she called her 3-line journal. Olivia had never been a diary person, but she liked the simplicity of writing just 3 short reflections before bed. One thing she enjoyed, one thing that challenged her, one thing she was curious about. Some nights it was simple. Enjoyed walking by the lake, challenged by feeling lonely this afternoon, curious why I stopped painting in the first place. Other nights, the lines surprised her. Enjoyed helping Ben with his homework, challenged by seeing an old friend who didn't ask how I was, curious what it would feel like to lead a workshop. Reading her own words helped her hear her inner voice again, the one that had been drowned out by years of serving others, meeting deadlines, managing calendars. It reminded her that her thoughts mattered, even if she did not speak them out loud. The third choice was about connection. She reached out to her neighbor Ruth, who had retired a year earlier after working as a pediatric nurse for over 3 decades. They had waved to each other for years, exchanged Christmas cards, but never truly talked. Over cups of tea on Ruth's back porch, Olivia found something sacred. Honest conversation. No comparisons, no small talk. Just 2 women naming the things no one else asked about. The joy of slow mornings. The ache of no longer being needed every day. The unexpected grief of aging. The quiet beauty of reinvention. They laughed. They cried. They made plans to meet again the next week. And just like that, Olivia began building something she hadn't realized she had lost. A circle. A space where she could be known, not just remembered. The fourth step came unexpectedly, working with her hands. One morning at the farmer's market, she noticed a flyer for a beginner pottery class. She signed up, half out of curiosity, half out of a quiet dare to herself. The clay was cold and stubborn. Her first bowl was lopsided and cracked, but she kept going. There was something grounding about the feel of earth in her hands, about shaping something imperfect, but entirely her own. Each week, she walked away with more than a pot. She walked away with presence, with patience, with a deeper connection to the rhythm of creating, without rushing. It reminded her that she was allowed to be new at something, allowed to fail, allowed to try. The final shift came during a walk with her husband John. They had been walking the same neighborhood path for years, talking about errands, the kids, the weather. But this time, she asked something different. "What do you want this part of life to look like? For us?" He paused. Then he said, "I don't know. I guess I thought we'd figure it out as we go." They kept walking, quietly, not needing to fill the space right away. That night, they sat at the kitchen table and opened a notebook. On one side, they wrote down what they each hoped for: travel, grandkid sleepovers, more time in nature, maybe downsizing to a smaller home. On the other side, They wrote what they were afraid of: growing apart, losing routine, not feeling useful. It was not a plan, it was a beginning. And in naming those hopes and fears together, they found new ground to stand on, shared, honest, and full of possibility. These 5 gentle ways did not turn Olivia's life into a picture-perfect retirement, but they gave her back something deeper, a sense of authorship. She no longer woke up asking, "What do I have to do today?" Instead, she asked, "What do I want to create today?" And that small change, those 5 quiet steps, helped her return home to herself. The most beautiful chapter yet. A year after retirement, Olivia stood in the middle of the community center gymnasium, surrounded by the quiet hum of folding chairs being set up and tables draped in cloths. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the strange, unexpected thrill of stepping into something new. Tonight was her art exhibit. Her first. She had named it Seasons Within, a small collection of watercolors and sketches she had painted over the past few months. They were not masterpieces. Some had smudges. Some were messy. But each piece carried a moment, an emotion she had not been able to put into words until she let her hands speak through color. There were paintings of lavender fields, of her granddaughter's rain boots left by the door, of an empty chair on the porch at sunset, of a mug on her kitchen counter with steam rising gently toward the window. Each one whispered a quiet truth. I am still here. I still have something to say. As people walked through the space, neighbors, old students, friends from church, Olivia noticed something she had not felt in a long time. They were not just looking at the art. They were seeing her. One woman stopped at a piece titled After the Last Bell, a soft image of a chalkboard, empty chairs, and light coming in through high windows. She turned to Olivia and said, "That's exactly how it feels when it all ends." Olivia nodded. It does. But that room, the one that feels empty, it can be filled again, just differently. After the exhibit, she was approached by the director of a local nonprofit that supported older adults in creative recovery. He had read her artist statement and asked if she would consider leading a small storytelling and art group for women transitioning into retirement. Olivia said yes, not because she felt fully ready, but because something inside her had shifted. She no longer waited for confidence to lead. She led with curiosity. The group met every Thursday in a sunlit room with mismatched chairs and a table filled with sketch pads, colored pencils, and warm tea. The women came with stories, some joyful, some aching. Together they created, they cried, they laughed at the strange freedom of starting fresh, at an age where most people had stopped expecting anything new. It was not a job. It was a calling. One evening, after the group had left, Olivia stayed behind to clean up. She found a note tucked under a teacup, written in careful cursive. It read, "I thought I was too late to matter again. Thank you for reminding me I'm not." Olivia stood there in the quiet, hands wrapped around a warm mug, and let the words settle in her chest. She remembered the letter she had found in her mother's box, the one that had started it all. "I thought I had more time?" She gently exhaled and whispered aloud, "I do have time." That truth had changed everything. It had taught her that purpose is not reserved for youth or tied to a title. It is not something we chase. It is something we uncover, gently, in the spaces where we finally make room to listen. It had taught her that becoming invisible is not an ending. It is an invitation to become visible again, on her own terms. And it had taught her that life does not ask us to be perfect, only present. Now, when Olivia wakes up in the morning, she no longer reaches for a to-do list. She opens her curtains, watches the light spread across the wall, and asks herself one question: what would feel meaningful today? Sometimes the answer is painting. Sometimes it is calling an old friend. Sometimes it is sitting quietly in her garden, watching bees float between blooms. But always, always, it is her choice. Her second spring had arrived, not in a rush, not with fanfare, but slowly, with grace. And as she moves through this new chapter, she no longer thinks about what she has lost. She thinks about what she still gets to give, who she still gets to be, and how much beauty still waits for her to say yes to it.